Hello, bonjour, namaste, ni hao, and ohio, everybody. What is going on? It is Galeriot here, and welcome back to the YouTube channel once again for another Danmachi video. And today, the focus will be on Danmachi Fulland of Water and Light, as we have gotten a brand new announcement that there will be a brand new successor announced this year. And of course, that will have, consequences and repercussions for, of course, the upcoming release of Danmachi Fulland of Water and Light, which is scheduled to release on the Nintendo Switch. So let's talk about it. Let's break it down. Let's talk about the possibility that Danmachi Fulland of Water and Light might be for the Nintendo Switch too. Of course, if you guys going to enjoy this video, please be sure to leave a like down below, subscribe to the channel for more Danmachi content, and let me know in the comment section down below your thoughts on Danmachi Fulland of Water and Light, and do you think it's possible that it will be on the Nintendo Switch too? Let me know in the comment section down below. Now, of course, if you guys weren't aware, a couple of days ago on the 7th of May, Nintendo came out with a tweet stating that they will be making an announcement for the Nintendo Switch successor within this fiscal year, which means that between March 2024 and March 2025, we will be seeing a brand new Switch announced, a brand new Switch console with upgraded, specs and everything. It will be coming out, or it will be announced sometime this year. It doesn't mean that it'll come out this year or this fiscal year before March 2025, but it will be announced this year, this fiscal year specifically. I have to keep saying fiscal year because it could be in 2025. They might make that announcement. They might make that announcement in Jan 2025. Who knows, right? We have no idea. In fact, they have gone on to say in this tweet that there will be a Nintendo Direct in June for the Nintendo Switch software lineup. So the actual Nintendo Switch that is available right now, there will be a software, release happening, as in like a lot of games will be releasing in the later half of 2024, which we might see Danmachi Fulland of Water and Light in that list as well. But there will be no mention of the Switch successor during that presentation. So the Nintendo Direct in June will not have anything regarding the new Switch coming up in probably 2025, most likely at this point, right? So obviously, the fact that there is a new Nintendo Switch coming out means that we have to talk about the possibility of Danmachi Fulland of Water and Light coming out on the Nintendo Switch too, because of course, they announced Danmachi Fulland of Water and Light is coming to the Switch, but they didn't say anything about the Switch too. To be fair, not a lot of games did, or if not any games did make a mention of the Nintendo Switch 2, because of course NDAs, contractual obligations, you can't really announce a console before, the company making the console announces it, kind of thing. You can't do that necessarily. Even Pokemon Legends Z to A, which is scheduled for 2025 even, they didn't make an announcement on what console it's going to be on. They just said it's going to be on the Nintendo Switch console. They didn't specify which one, Switch 2 or Switch necessarily. So keep that in mind when it comes to, of course, even Danmachi Fulland of Water and Light. They can't make a mention of the new Nintendo Switch until it's fully officially announced. And while this is technically an official announcement, we don't know the name of the console, we don't know anything. So they can't really say anything until they get approval from Nintendo themselves of, whether or not they can say anything. So of course, what this means is that obviously, this year, the Nintendo Switch is basically going to be a little bit of a dead console in the sense of like a lot of companies and manufacturers and developers, I should say more so, are probably going to wait for the new Nintendo Switch to release before they make hardware, software, or anything of that sort. And I assume that also has to probably include Danmachi Fulland of Water and Light, because in my personal opinion, especially if, these developers have been given the dev kits, because usually all these companies, right, all these software manufacturers and stuff, right, all these game developers, right, what they are given is a dev kit well in advance, about a year and a half in advance, so that they can start developing games for the Switch successor before it releases, so that you can have launch titles, you can have titles releasing within the year, so that the console is not going to be empty, right? So to make sure that the console is not empty, they give these developers dev kits. Now I don't know how likely it is that Bushiroad, out of all developers, a very brand new publisher and developer, by the way. Bushiroad is a very recent publisher and, name in the industry. So it's kind of hard to imagine that they would have been given a dev kit necessarily, right? But imagining they have, right, what they can do with this dev kit is a lot, because the jump up from the Nintendo Switch to the upcoming Nintendo Switch 2, we'll just call it the Switch 2 for ease, and rather than calling it the Switch successor, we'll call it the Switch 2, makes it a huge boost. The Switch 2 is miles and miles and miles better than the Nintendo Switch itself. Now, these are just rough rumor specs. Now, we don't know the confirmation on whether or not these are real. These are just, news outlets and different sources and rumors coming out together and trying to, see what's commonly being said across all these sources, right? Because at the end of the day, if multiple sources are saying the same thing, it's a potential likelihood that that is going to happen. So, the specs right now are a 12 gigabyte RAM, which is insane, by the way, because the Nintendo Switch only has 4 gigabytes. If we take a look at this spec sheet from Wikipedia, of course, right, you can see that it is only 4 gigabytes of RAM. If you take a look at this specific point here that I've highlighted, only 4 gigabytes of RAM. And you have to remember that on a console, about a gig or so goes into the system itself, and assuming that's the same case here, you're probably going to see about 10.5 to 11 gigs going into the system itself, or sorry, 1 to 1.5 gigs going into the system, saving about 10.5 to 11 gigs for the games itself, which is massive, especially for open world games. It is huge. You have to remember that when Xenoblade Chronicles X came out on the Wii U, and this is of course an older console, but still, it was on a console that had only 2 gigabytes of RAM, and at the time, a lot of people praised the shit out of that game because it was able to create such a dynamic and insane open world with effectively what was a gig of RAM, effectively, which is absolutely insane. And the fact that we're coming now to a potential era where games are probably going to have 10.5 to 11 gigs of RAM is insane. Now, some people might be saying, well, Gale, PCs have like 16 to 32 gigs of RAM, and sometimes that isn't enough. But you have to remember, on PC, you have more things running in the background. You have browsers, you have different applications, you have different softwares running in the background, and so on and so forth, that kind of use up that RAM and use it up for good, right? So in that sense, yeah, PCs do have more RAM, but they have to use more as well, whereas a console only has to use about a gig and a half to run its system, whereas the rest can be given directly to the game, basically. There's no other application or anything of that sort running in the background. You're not running multiple apps at the same time on the Nintendo Switch. It's only the game and the system itself, the UI and stuff, right? So that's something to bear in mind. 256 gigs of RAM, which is super nice. 1536 CUDA cores, 48 Tensor cores, 12 RT cores, which compared to, of course, the Nintendo Switch, I think is a lot more. It's as simple as that. It's just a lot more. I mean, of course, if you take a look at the storage, that's a huge jump up as well. I mean, the best thing we can take a look at is the Tegra one. That'll give us the CUDA cores and stuff, of course, for this as well, right? I think it's not that much, to be honest. The CUDA cores in this is not at all that much, so that's something to bear in mind as well. So obviously you're gonna see a big boost, right? Effectively, you're gonna see a big boost there. Ampere architecture with features backported from Ada, 8x ARM A78C, and file decompression engine. Now, obviously these are all just technology based, very tech heavy words and suggestions, right? Some of you guys may not be aware of it. Even for me, I'd have to look at the comparisons, and I have to look at what the Tegra X1 was capable of. I don't remember what it was capable of, or how many CUDA cores it has and Tensor cores it has, and so on and so forth. So I would have to look at that. But if you want to take a look at the rough comparisons, we have Neoxon here, who has given the comparisons. In handheld mode, it is right above the PS4 before DLSS. Docked PS4 Pro, Xbox Series S, with a more modern hardware than the former. RAM slower than the PS5 Xbox Series X, but more capacity than the Xbox Series S. Should have about 10.5 to 11 gigs of RAM available to games, going by the Switch 1's RAM allotment for its OS, so I was right on that front. And then, of course, storage, UFS 3.1 max speed should be a hair under Xbox Series X/S, 2.1 gigabytes per second versus 2.4 gigabytes per second, which means that basically what this means is that the game's loadings will be a lot faster and stronger, which is really, really good. I think that is going to be insane. The load times being faster is going to be absolutely brilliant for these games, in all honesty. I think that is going to be phenomenal even. Now, the thing is, right, let's talk about Danmachi Fulland of Water and Light. And this is where things get very interesting, to say the least, right? Because like I said, it's only been announced for the Nintendo Switch. Now, I know I went on a little bit of a tangent talking about the Switch 2 and stuff. You are here for Danmachi Fulland of Water and Light. Danmachi Fulland of Water and Light being only announced for the Switch means that it could be one of two things happening. There's two probabilities happening. I have a feeling it's most likely going to be the former one, but I'm really hoping it's going to be, I'm thinking it's going to be the latter situation more so than the former, but let's talk about them. And the first point being is that the game is actually being built for the Switch 2. Right? They haven't announced it, but it's actually being built for the Switch 2, hence why we have not gotten any footage or trailers or anything of that sort, because they can't show it due to the fact that it's on the Switch 2, which is entirely possible. We still don't know when it's releasing as well. They haven't given an official date yet, and I wonder that it might be the reason why we haven't got an official date yet. We're waiting for the Switch 2 to get announced. We know when it's coming out, and then they'll automatically say, like, yeah, it's going to be a launch title for the Switch 2 as well, which would be insane, by the way. It would be absolutely insane if it is indeed a launch title for the Switch 2. But that being said, though, right? I don't still know how likely it is that Bushiroad, out of all the companies are in and around Japan and, you know, at the rest of the world, how likely it is that they would get a Nintendo Switch 2 dev kit necessarily, right? I feel like if you're going to be giving it to certain studios, it's going to be the ones that Nintendo is affiliated with the most, you know, the likes of your Monolith Soft, your Game Freak, your your that sort of Platinum Games, I feel, Atlas potentially, and so on and so forth. I don't see them giving it necessarily to Bushiroad, to be quite honest, right? But if they do, that would be insane, because then we can truly see how well these developers can actually do with the power of the Nintendo Switch 2. Because like I said, you know, if games like Xenoblade and stuff were running on like 1 gigs of RAM and stuff like that back in the day, and you know, we know how good Monolith Soft are as a company. We know that their level is much higher than a Bushiroad's most likely, right? But if a Bushiroad can now utilize more bandwidth, effectively, more power to their hands, basically, it can be a little less optimized compared to Monolith Soft's games, but because of how powerful the Nintendo Switch 2 console will be, they can, you know, kind of push the boundaries a little bit more while being slightly unoptimized still in terms of performance and stuff like that, right? Because just of how powerful the Switch 2 is going to be, it'll cover for the flaws of the game potentially, right? That's what we can potentially say will happen with maybe Pokemon Scarlet and Violet as well. We see it on the Nintendo Switch 2. If, you know, they do a port over to it, of course, right? Then it might be better, potentially. Again, this is all potential and this is all hypothetics, right? It's all hypothetics and potentials. But if that were the case, then yeah, absolutely, would be amazing to see. And it's, I think, again, one of the reasons why we haven't even seen any sort of announcement. I mean, this Twitter account was made 2 months ago, and we haven't heard a single thing from them. Not a single peep out of their hole has come out. And it's kind of insane to see nothing really being announced so far, you know? I was kind of hoping that at least every month or every 2 months we'd probably get something, but the fact we haven't gotten anything is very telling in a way as well, that they're probably waiting for something, or, you know, they're waiting for a good opportunity to make some announcement for this game now as well, right? The other thing, and the other probability, and I think this is way more unlikely than the former, is that the Switch 2, which is also, by the way, it is also reported to be, if we take a look at this, Nintendo Switch 2 backwards compatibility. Yes, there is a potential and very good chance that the Nintendo Switch is going to be, or the upcoming Switch successor, Switch 2, is going to be Nintendo Switch backwards compatible, which means that games from the Nintendo Switch, like for example, Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, or Breath of the Wild, and so on and so forth, right? If those games are available on the Nintendo Switch, they will be playable on the Switch 2 as well, if you have a physical copy or digital copy of the game, which means that Danmachi Fulland of Water and Light, while it may release this year, it may be backwards compatible and available to play on the Nintendo Switch 2. So I do think either way, right, these are the two likelihoods, and I think both, by that definition, means that the game will be available on the Nintendo Switch 2. So I think that is completely fair to say and completely fair to, you know, think about, is that, you know, that will be happening. The real question is it going to be a lot better than we think by it being developed for the Switch 2, or is it going to be developed for the Switch and therefore a little less visually appealing potentially, in terms of the game performance and everything. Obviously with the new console, you'll see load times being faster and everything, but like in terms of appearance, they wouldn't have been able to push the boundaries like they might have been if they had the Nintendo Switch 2 dev kit, and of course we're developing it for the Nintendo Switch 2. That's something that's going to be fascinating to see and fascinating to talk about. But yeah, let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section down below. I wanted to make this video because, of course, of this recent announcement of the Switch 2, and also the fact that we're going to be getting a new Danmachi game for the Nintendo Switch. I just wanted to talk about the potential likelihood of us seeing, obviously games like Danmachi Fulland of Water and Light on the Nintendo Switch 2. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Of course, if you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like down below, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you guys in the next one. Until then, take it easy, everybody. Bye-bye.